The first line of the script should grab you. When I offered David a bite, I didn't expect the way he looked at me to feel like an invitation. That look stayed with me longer than the taste of the pie. My name is Emily. I'm married to Mark. We've been together for 11 years. We have a life that looks steady in pictures and polite conversation. The same town, a cozy house. The kind of comfort people name in envy. I love Mark. That's not in question. But there are small, quiet places inside a person that can go unvisited for years. Rooms where the light slowly fades and nobody notices, until one day someone else turns the lamp on. David moved in 2 doors down. He's late 20s, runs a small photography business, drinks too much bad coffee, and knows how to notice when someone's pretending to be fine. He stopped by with a broken lens and a box of pastries the first week, said thanks for lending him a jar of sugar, and lingered in my doorway like a question. We talked about trivial things first, movies, the neighbor's dog, the town's best diner. But he listened the way people used to, before we all got better at half answers. I started baking again because he complimented my lemon tart. It's silly to trace a life's undoing to a pastry, but it is true that the act of making something with care can crack open parts of you that have been left to dust. I offered him a slice when Mark was working a late shift. He took one bite and closed his eyes like someone who'd rediscovered a childhood memory. "Emily," he said, voice soft, "this is perfect." The compliment landed differently than it should have. I felt seen, not as a wife or a neighbor, but as a woman who had made something and been noticed for it. From there, the distance between Mark and me didn't change in a dramatic scene. No shouting, no big confession right away. It was a slow drift. Mark worked long hours and came home tired in that particular way people do when they refocused on bills and careers. We spoke in calendars and grocery lists, and our conversations about feelings became infrequent, like calls on a bad connection. Meanwhile, David's presence was a small, repeated warmth. He brought over film stills. He made me laugh out loud. He asked questions I hadn't heard in years. Each interaction was innocent, but layered, like notes building into a melody. It surprised me how quickly a single touch could mean so much. Once, while he was fixing a broken strap on my camera, his hand lingered on my wrist. It was nothing violent, more of a casual human contact. But when your emotional life has been dried thin, even a small warming can feel like a fire. That night we shared a glass of wine at my kitchen table. Conversation drifted into memories and confessions, real ones, small and jarring. And then we kissed. Not in a cinematic, triumphant way, but clumsily, like people who had both misread the map. It felt like a betrayal and like an answer at once. The affair that followed was a tangle of contradictions. It was thrilling because it was new. It was hollow because it required secrecy. I told myself it was a wake-up call, a way to prove I still mattered. I told myself many things to soften what we were doing. There were mornings I would make coffee for Mark and feel like I was living 2 parallel lives. There were afternoons when David would be on my porch and I'd share a quiet cigarette and talk about the kinds of things you only say when the world lets its guard down. Guilt arrived quietly, then loudly. Mark noticed little changes first. My distracted nods, the way I sometimes flinched when the phone buzzed. He asked, "Are you okay?" more than once, and each time I answered with a version of the truth that was kinder than the real one. Suspicion is a slow-growing vine. It wraps itself around trust and chokes. The day he found David's scarf in my car was the day the vine tightened. We sat across from each other at our kitchen table, the same table where I'd offered pie to someone else years before. And the world felt stripped to its bones, I told him. I told him everything that night. Not because I had a plan, but because the weight of the secret was heavier than the fear of confession. Saying the words wasn't a drama designed to hurt. It was an ugly, honest collapse. Mark's face was a map of pain I had no right to draw. He asked questions, sharp and precise. I wept because I could see the line between us and knew I had stepped over it. The aftermath was a grueling, tender mess. Rage, silence, bargaining, and some small attempts at conversation that did not pretend everything was fine. We chose to try to repair. I say we, but the work was mostly mine at first, to be patient with his hurt and to be accountable in ways that felt humbling. We went to counseling. We stopped pretending that fine was an acceptable answer. We started with small things: a walk without phones, Sunday breakfasts, honest check-ins about how we were feeling. The first months were brittle and painful. There were nights when Mark couldn't look at me, days when he threw himself into work to avoid home, and a constant question: could trust be rebuilt where it had been broken? David left a few weeks after the truth came out. He packed his camera and said quietly that he'd made a mistake that should not have happened in my life. He apologized in a way that felt sincere and pained. He promised to do better and to leave us to our attempts at repair. There was no melodrama, just the soft closing of a door that never should have been open. If there's a lesson here, it's not a tidy moral. I'm not proud of what I did. I regret the pain I caused. But the story also taught me about the dangers of complacency and how important small acts of attention are in a long-term relationship. Love needs tending in ways that are unromantic: talk, time, curiosity, and the willingness to be emotionally present. It taught me that when you collide with someone who seems to see you again, you have to ask yourself what you are willing to risk and whether the cost is worth it. This isn't an instruction manual for anyone. It's a cautionary tale and, oddly, a reminder that people can be painfully fallible and also capable of choosing to rebuild. Mark and I are still working through the aftermath, still learning how to be honest without being cruel. If you're listening because you've been in a similar place, please choose conversation over secrecy. If you make a grievous mistake, own it, and then do the hard work of repair, for the people you love and for yourself. If you want me to share how Mark and I continued the slow, imperfect work of rebuilding trust, subscribe, and I'll tell you the next chapter. Thanks for listening.